So it's really my great pleasure to bring out a great action sports filmmaker, Mr. Dana Brown, and the most dangerous man on two wheels, Robbie Maddison.
Thank you.
Well, Dana, let's just start by talking a little bit about sort of the origins of this movie, because we saw a little bit in the trailer there. People, I'm sure a lot of people know your dad, Bruce Brown's movies, the original On Any Sunday, and of course The Endless Summer, which is probably the movie's single most responsible for turning people on to surfing all over the world. And you sort of over the last years kind of revisited a lot of your dad's work in different ways, with Endless Summer revisited, On Any Sunday revisited, your own Step in a Liquid, which is a kind of high-tech Endless Summer for the 21st century. And so how did you come to want to revisit On Any Sunday in this way, to sort of see where bikes and motorbikes and everything else on two wheels is at this moment?
Well, On Any Sunday to me is like the high water mark in action sports documentaries. It was nominated for an Oscar, which imagine this kind of film, that happening.
Hey, it could happen. Don't say anything.
No, I'm just saying. So I got contacted by Red Bull Media House, and they wanted to do kind of a mainstream thing that got in the theaters, and were wondering what I had in mind. And we talked about different subject matter, and they brought up motorcycling. And then they said, what if you did a sequel to On Any Sunday? And I said, well, why don't we call it something else? Because in motorcycling, it's kind of like, you know, you have the New Testament and you go, I found another chapter. Like, there's people not going to be happy about that. But they kind of convinced me to do it, and I talked to Dad, and he said, yeah, I think it's time. And the more I thought about kind of my career, I thought, you know, like you said, I don't do movies on purpose to exploit or capitalize on his thing. We have similar sensibilities, et cetera. And I thought, God, you know, he's going to be 77. My mom passed away a few years ago. Nobody lasts forever. And I thought, wow, it's a good opportunity to maybe continue a legacy and give a salute to the reason I even wanted to make films, which was seeing the original On Any Sunday when I was a kid. And here we are. You know, and I knew the story. It's a great world. So, you know, here we are.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, you know, when you set out, how much did you already know about, you know, just how much the sport had changed in 40 plus years, technology-wise? I mean, it's amazing, some of the bikes in the movie and what people can do with them. And how much of that was a discovery process about, you know, what the film would cover, who would be in the film, that sort of thing?
Well, I'm a fan of motorcycling, and I follow it and I ride. But I didn't, the co-writer on the movie is a guy named Scott Russo, who was editor at Cycle News, and I brought him in just for him to describe to me not so much the different disciplines, but the different people in the disciplines. Right. So every segment could kind of show a little different shade of the color spectrum in this shared passion. And as I got into it, you know, first of all, the talent of guys like this is unbelievable. And the cameras have gotten so much better. Everything's really just blown up in the ability, but the spirit of it remains. I mean, this sense of family, this shared passion, this thing that's passed on from generation to generation, like many shared passions. So I thought, well, this is pretty bitchin', because you have something that's going to look completely different, but at its heart, it's the heart beats the same. So it was a discovery. I kind of expected something, and I think in a lot of ways it exceeded kind of my wildest expectations.
And Robbie, can you talk a little bit about how you became involved? Did you already know Dana, or did he look you up and sort of pitch it to you?
Well, it just kind of it happened authentically, and I think that was what the beauty of it was, because nothing was forced. And you know, it's one thing that I'm about with my jumps is like I'm happy to put my life on the line, but it's got to mean something, and it's got to have like I have to be connected to it, not only, you know, my heart, soul, my whole being. It's you know, my life on the line. So I was actually already working on a project with Skull Candy, and when Rebel Media House came to us and said we're doing another On Any Sunday film, I was like, yeah, and we want you to be involved. I was like, yeah, let's do this. So I knew of Dana. I'm a fan of his father's work, and the original On Any Sunday is obviously a cult classic in motorcycling, and it makes you want to go ride your motorcycle. It doesn't matter how you ride a motorcycle, whether you just ride around on your little brother's pit bike, it makes you want to do that. It's like no matter how you ride bikes, I feel it doesn't matter what level you're at, it's always fun because it takes you out of the the endless chatter of your mind, and you're able to just kind of focus on something for a minute, and you get a break from hearing the voices, and you're able to kind of like really just experience life in the moment. And when I got the call up to say, hey, we'd love to have you involved in the film, it was just a pure delight. And as we move forwards, I was able to make a small project into a bigger project, and to get the publicity and the coverage that we're getting with this film is amazing. And to meet, a nice little guy like this, he's become a great friend of mine, and his family's amazing. And I'm a big fan of their work and just their lifestyle, their ethic, their relaxed approach. It really kind of transcends through the film. And so it's been a blessing, to be able to. It meant even more to me to go and do this jump once on any Sunday was a part of the stunt as well. It meant so much more to me. It made it a lot more. At first, I really thought that this jump, it felt like I was missing an element, and this definitely filled that hole and made it so much more.
Well, we have a clip of you from the movie, so let's take a look at that, and then we'll talk a little bit more. I actually thought it could be interesting maybe for both of you, actually. I mean, you, Robbie, talk about it a little bit in the movie, but for people who haven't seen it, just sort of what your entry point was into motorcycle culture, motorcycle riding, and motorcycle racing. I think we sort of all start out on a bike with training wheels, and we lose the training wheels, and for some of us, that's about where it stops, and others, it becomes something much bigger.
Yeah, for me, I've always felt some sort of energy about me to prove myself. And I had a bigger sister that used to beat me up when I was a kid, so I think that might have had something to do with it. But, I was born to young parents, had me when I was really young, and I was kind of just left to my own devices. I used to walk the bushlands when I was 4 or 5 years old, and just go hunting by myself and catch lizards. And I mean, I was left to my own devices, and not that it was a great thing, really kind of. It definitely set me in a direction that gained momentum pretty quickly. And I remember when I was a really little kid, I went to get my first motorbike, and I was just a little guy, and the guy at the bike shop said to my dad, I don't know if he's, big enough and tough enough to ride a motorcycle. And he turned around and I was eating a lemon, and he's like, okay, he's eating a raw lemon. Yeah, he probably could do this. And so it's just been one thing after another. I've had a lot of injuries, but there's just been that inside of me. There's been that little kid with a dream who wants to jump mountains and do crazy things on a bike. And I let it go to rest when I was 16. I had a viral meningitis, a viral encephalitis, was on a deathbed. And when I came out of that, something inside of me just said, you've got one opportunity to follow your dream. And I went and watched a motorcycle event in a local in Sydney. And there was some of my friends were in the show. And I was like, man, I got to get out there and try it because I know I'm better than these guys. And it really started off as a competition thing, but once I got past that, it's really become something it's part of my being. And that's why I say I do these for authentic reasons, because it's life and death. Like jumping off a 10-story building, it can go horribly wrong. And in the film, I jumped a length of a football field and dropped 20 stories. And one breath of wind or an oversight in a certain direction could take you down. And it's been. Motorcycles has consumed my life, and I mean, it started from the first injuries. Now it's a file at the hospital as big as my arm, and they definitely know me.
and for me, like Robbie was talked about, in the original On Any Sunday, there was no real Evel Knievel was not profiled, etc. Somebody said, what about the stunt guys and the freestyle guys? And I went, that's good, but this is really about heart and soul and spirit. And then I met Robbie, and we talked before I decided to do it. And he's such a sweet guy, but he's kind of obviously a little bit bananas. and I was talking, and it's like, I've ridden forever, but I don't understand what motivates you to go, oh, there's a building, this would be fun. We'll figure out if I can drop off of it, Why on earth would you do that? And I asked him, I said, is this something you acquired? Because he has these long answers, and he goes, well, when I was 3, I was on a big wheel. He goes, and he pauses, he goes, oh, this was the first time I fractured my skull. The first time he fractured, it was at 3 years old. He just drove the big wheel off there's a gene that's so unique. So he's got all this spirit and soul, yet he wants to do this stuff that the rest of us just go like, you couldn't pay me enough money to try that. I don't care how many accolades you have, how much people slap you on the back. And I love that. And we've become really good friends. And it's like, I still don't understand it, but it's fun. But it's really fun to tell their story, his story.
Well, one of the really charming things in your dad's movie was that Steve McQueen was in the film. We saw Steve McQueen riding BMX bikes on the weekend with a bunch of non-celebrities, just like a regular guy. And then, you have some celebrities in this film, like Mickey Rourke, who also just sort of blend in to the crowd. There's this kind of great democracy of bike riders. And I'm sort of curious because this film is so much more high-tech in many ways than your dad's films, and it's filmed all over the world in high definition with this incredible Dolby sound mix. So how important was it for you to kind of preserve that human element at the center of it, despite all these bigger bells and whistles?
Well, I think that's the most important thing, because you can approach a project and go, look, we have all this technology available to us now, so we don't really have to try. We're just going to show people all these really cool things. And that's really not the case, because they can go spend the same $11 at the theater and see universes blow up and Matthew McConaughey do something, and, you're kind of up against it. So you have to find that story, and the fact that there's all these kind of stories and heart. And I think anybody, whether you give a crud about motorcycles or not, people identify with having a passion. Obviously a lot of people here have passions about computers and things, so it's, but this is just a little more visual. And to be able to capitalize on the 4K cameras, and to be able to capitalize on the partnership with Dolby doing this Atmos mix, and that's never existed for this type of film, where it was affordable to kind of make it seem like $100 million film when you don't have to spend $100 million, so.
Well, talk a little bit about somebody that we're going to see in another clip, but before we see this, another one of the subjects in the film, Ashley Fiolic, and how you found her and sort of what makes her unique to this world.
Well, Ashley's a multiple-time women's motocross champion, and she was born deaf. And I knew she was very cute young gal, incredible racer, and I was talking to people about her and her relationship with both her parents. Yeah. But her pop travels with her and stuff. And, I just kind of called him up and said, would you like to guys go on a trail ride? I'd love to do a father and daughter thing, thinking, well, that's a little bit of a switch. And just make it real visual. And they were, so incredibly nice. And I just thought Ashley represented something you wouldn't expect. She probably stands how tall is Ashley? About 5'2"? Yeah. Yeah, weighs about 105, soaking wet, deaf her whole life, and can kick anybody's ass on a motorcycle, and just is smiling all the time. And I thought, that's what movies are. You don't, an essay, what you do, Scott. Sometimes you have to tell somebody, here's what I think, here's what you should think. In a movie, you just go, here's kind of an unbelievable story, and I don't have to draw conclusions. I just point out the story, the love of a father and a daughter, the bonding over a motorcycle, and the fact she's overcome, this handicap without overcoming it. She's, it's just, so that's where Ashley came from.
Yeah, so let's take a look at that
and
clip.
She's cute.
There's another quite remarkable friendship in this movie, which is between Travis Pastrana and Doug Henry. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, Travis Pastrana's, a legend. He's raced NASCAR, and he's a rally car champion, and he's got his Nitro Circus show on MTV and all this stuff. And I met Travis a few years ago, and he's genuinely one of the nicest guys in the world. And Doug Henry's his boyhood idol, and Doug paralyzed himself racing from the waist down. And we were trying to find a place for Travis in the movie, because I think he just represents, kind of all that's positive, because he's really a genuinely great guy, great family guy. And they're both East Coast guys. Actually, I'm on the East Coast, so now that they're both from your guys' neck of the wood. And, I said, what if you guys get together, which they do. And so, yeah, Doug came down and they went riding because Doug's built a motorcycle that he can completely control his hands. And again, I think it kind of shows two things. It shows this, even though which motorcycling can be really dangerous, but that passion overrides whatever happens, and this friendship that these two people have.
Well, and also it's kind of wonderful because there is so much like high technology in this movie, but in a way, Doug's contraption is kind of like a mad scientist's homemade invention, of how he could keep riding in his condition. It's wonderful. So we'll also take a little look at that and then talk a little bit more. Did you go in the foam pit?
No. So here's a good one. I'm at Red Bull Media House talking, and we're about to go to Travis's house in Maryland. And all these Red Bull executives, no offense, because some of my favorite people are from Red Bull, are going, don't let Travis get you in the foam pit because this guy broke his ankle, this guy got cut, all this stuff. So Travis is going to try to talk you into going in the foam pit. Don't go in the foam pit. So we get there and we're shooting, and I jokingly say to Travis, I said, I'm not going in the foam pit. And he goes, I'd never ask you to go in the foam pit. And I went, well, all these other guys got injured and stuff. And he goes, yeah, those guys, I don't like those guys. So I guess they came and like, hey, hanging out with Travis. Travis goes, hey, dude, I got a good idea. Let's go in the foam pit, like to try to weed the people out, I guess, a little bit. But so I felt kind of in there because Travis didn't make me go in the foam pit.
Now, this is a question, and maybe Robbie can comment on this too, but you narrate your own films. We heard that a little bit there. Your dad did that. He used to do live narration to films back in the day. And you have captured a certain folksy, self-effacing quality very much.
I think I'm quite sophisticated.
I guess the question is does that come naturally, or did you have to practice that, that sort of wry humor? When
I was making Step into Liquid, we actually made the whole film, the rough cut, without any narration. Yeah. It was just told second person. And, we ran a couple tests, and it was difficult to go from one section to the other. We thought some of the audience was missing some of the points, and somebody goes, well, you have to narrate it. And that was the last thing I wanted to do, because I thought, geez, everybody's, Dad set the bar so high, and then I did it for Step, and the first time in the sound booth, I did the first, like, my name's Dana Brown and I'm a surfer, and they play it back, and I sounded so much like my freaking dad, which you don't know how you sound. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great, No, it's just natural. I just do my movies kind of, it's not something I'd love to do it in another way, is what I'm trying to tell you. Although I did do Toyota ads. I was the voice. There's money in this if you got a voice. But I'm not a professional narrator. It's just kind of their personal stories, and it kind of makes sense. It also establishes a point of view for the story, that I'm not the omniscient narrator going, this is exactly how everything is. I'm not Morgan Freeman. I'm just this, well, I kind of am Morgan Freeman, every other Friday. But, I'm just this guy. I'm just telling you a Shaggy Dog story that maybe you sit down and watch. I'm not trying to be the expert of experts, So it kind of serves a purpose to give the movie a point of view as well.
Robbie, we saw you hobble out here a little bit, so I assume there's not another jump in your immediate future, but what are you dreaming of these days?
I hobbled out here because Dana attacked me this morning. And no, I had surgery on Friday, but I'm working on a couple of projects. I have one project close to heart. I've been working on it for 2 years, but it involves motorcycle, it involves water. But I'm just trying to keep it under my hat for now. I haven't really... We've had some huge success. We haven't recorded anything with Guinness Book yet because we're just trying to really find out exactly what it can do. But I have some big dreams for it, and hopefully you guys will see it soon.
And Dana, have you given thought as to, since you've kind of exhausted your dad's filmography now, what might be the next step for you?
I'm just going to start making sequels of my own movie, 900 years later. I've thought about a couple things. I mean, on this kind of thing, we didn't really finish the mix till July, and then you got to go out and promote it. And but there's some things I'm considering. I'd like to do maybe some shorter format stuff before I do the next feature. But it's kind of I'm going to survive this, and hopefully it goes good starting on Friday, and people want to hire me again. That's kind of where I'm at.
Well, I'm going to turn it over in a second to the audience for some questions, but we have one more clip from the movie to look at, which is a sequence involving a custom motorcycle designer called Roland Sands. So we'll take some questions for now for these guys, if there are some.
Awesome. My question is for Robbie. I imagine there must be some fear involved in what you do, or at some point there must have been fear involved. Just from that clip of you going up to that arch and like coming back down, was there a moment of like terrifying fear, or have you moved past that? Is it more an energy that excites you? I mean, kind of what goes through your head when you do these huge things that you do?
Well, I'd like to joke about it, but it's like, it is what it is. I honestly, I am fearful. When I did the jump on the Arc de Triomphe, I started going through the motions of it probably about a year before, and I jumped the football field successfully prior to that, and Red Bull said to me, hey, that went off so great, it was such a huge success for us, what's next? And straight away, like just normal thinking, I was like, let's put a row of tanks in there, or let's make a soccer field. It's a bit longer. And I was like, no, that's what Evel Knievel did. I want my stuff to be like interesting and different. And I said, there's something that needs to come out, but I don't know the answer right now, so I'm not going to give one. And if the time passes and I don't give you an answer when you need it, well, then I just feel that everything happens for a reason. I just like to stay in the flow. So I kind of just said, well, I'll get back to you if I come up with it. And one day I was driving down the freeway and I was doing about 70 mile an hour, and I looked over it. There was a Holiday Inn off the 405 in California, and passing the Holiday Inn at 70 mile an hour, I was like, with the right ramp at this speed, I could just tell I would have jumped right over the building. And I was like, there's the idea. So I called the guys at Red Bull, and I'm like, I've got a great new idea. And honestly, that's how it went. But I had to commit to that jump. After we had some talks and we talked about how to practice it and all this and that, I committed to it. And when I started kind of envisioning like being in Las Vegas and going off this ramp, like I was going weak at the knees, like my heart was pounding, I was cold sweats, and I started listening to everyone else's opinion, and no one had anything positive to say. Like no one around me thought I was in my right mind. And even my trainer was like, man, I think you bit off more than you can chew, because I don't, and he's a professional guy, someone I look up to, is a legendary racer. And so I kind of really started questioning myself, and it sent me on a bit of a journey of like finding out who I am and what I'm about. And it really made me commit to my heart and soul. And that's why I say I'm passionate about things, because I have to be to believe in it. And it's what I had to discover to be able to follow through with this. And literally, like when I went to the practice setup, they had a 10-story building made out of scaffolding in the desert. And I walked to the top of it. And that was literally like, when I've heard the saying, you go weak at the knees, I literally went weak at the knees, dropped to my knees and threw up. And I was so fearful. I was in tears. I was shaking, and I didn't know if I wanted to go through with it. And I just felt like it was the biggest pressure in the world. And, I just kind of thought, well, I'm in a hole. I got to dig my way out of this, and I just feel that like everything happens for reasons. And I really, truly believe in that. So I decided that I was going to do it, because it was a childhood dream of mine to be able to get a platform like this and be able to show the world something that what I do and what I'm passionate about. And I decided that if I was to kill myself during the process, well, then that was just how it was meant to go. So I just fully committed to it, and I was so terrified and fearful, but I just took each day as it came. And I did some soul searching, and I ended up being able to just being able to be at peace with however it ended up. And it made me train my butt off, and I got really strong, and it was the best physical shape I've ever been in. And I kind of, on the night, I had this confidence about me that I knew I was going to make it, and there was nothing to really solidify that. I just felt it inside. And I think once you go to those depths and those extremes to commit to something, and it like brings out this nature in you. And I've spoken with the Marines and the Special Forces guys and done some work with those, and they're like, that's exactly what we need to get out of our guys for them to go into battle and go to these extreme places. So we kind of was able to kind of like understand a little bit more once I worked with those guys. And it's like I'm fearful, and when I do these jumps, it's exactly why it has to make sense, because I have to commit to it, and it's really becomes like a matter of life and death, and I'm cool with that. But yeah, at no means I'm not fearful, but there's a point where you can listen to the negativity or you listen to the positivity, and your mind always wants to throw at you the negative ways. And I feel no matter what venture you do in life, you know, even if it's going for a job opportunity or something that you really believe in, there's always a way of listening to the negativity and shortchanging yourself and walking away from an opportunity that you could have hung in there and maybe got through it. And so it became powerful for me. It became a prerequisite, and it allowed me to go and do the jump in Corinth Canal. It didn't quite get as much publicity, but it was way crazier, and it's allowed me to do a lot more things in my life just from this philosophy and what I've understood. And even the jump that we did on any Sunday, it was something that I'd never practiced for. I kind of opened my big mouth and said, yeah, I'll do it. And then like got to the morning, it's like, oh, what do I get myself into? And there's definitely fear going on. But when it comes to the point of going off the jump, I'm able to just turn that mindset off, turn that negative, like the chatter off, and just stay in the moment. And I really there's like a running order of things I pre-check, and one of them is Mother Nature, and I check the wind, and I kind of listen to the energy and all that crazy stuff, and it's I have a way of figuring it out. But yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm fearful or some Superman. I just have a way of figuring it out, and I've stayed committed to something that has been a childhood dream of mine, and able to do some stupid things that probably should have got killed doing them.
How do you physically train, like to drop 20 stories or to fly across a football field? What are you doing in the gym?
Well, I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm only training for the best case scenario. Like worst case scenario, if something mechanically goes wrong or I make like a huge error, well then there's no amount of training that can save you from that one. You're done, and that's like the reality of it. So I just train to walk out of it in the best case scenario. And jumping a football field still has a lot of impact. And I've had back surgery. I've ruptured my lumbar spine and blown out a couple of discs. And so I've been through the battle scars and worked out like what I need to do to get through it. But to answer the question, like physically, I do a lot of core work. So I do pretty much at the end of my when I get to true fitness, I stand on the round Bosu balls, and I stand on them and do all my workouts standing on it. So it's like a lot of balance, it activates every single muscle. And, I do a lot of fast twitching stuff. So bouncing on trampolines with my eyes closed, juggling tennis balls and throwing them against the walls. So you just kind of get that awareness, like a kind of enhancing that seventh sense, of like being able to see without seeing and being able to feel things and feel the energy, because there's energy around and you can feel it if you really harness into it. And I've been able to form a relationship with my soul, and it's got all the answers when you want to listen to it. And I have a really kind of crazy spiritual guy that I go and listen to, and there's rhyme and reasons to certain things, and it seems like a really distant at first, but the more you when it's your only lifeline, you're able to kind of figure it out. And it's been something I've grown a lot from, and it's something that I hope to come back to soon. And I mean, every time I go through a jump like this, I really have to kind of deep dive back into that pond. It's not something I do every day, but leading up to a big jump, it's my lifeline. I really need to focus on it. So it's and as much as it is physically, there's a spiritual dimension to it as well. And I'd spend a lot of time trying to meditate, so I'd try and take like an hour a day to just turn the mind off and sit in silence. And it might sound wacky or weird, but it's hard to do, and an hour is a long time with no thought, but it really kind of brings a whole stillness about you, and it enhances your senses. You go from that to listen to the BS that people talk, and you can really decipher what's good and what's bad. So it helps me kind of stick to my path and stay on track.
Is your passion driving motorcycles or doing stunts?
My passion is living life. It's motorcycles for me is a paintbrush, and I feel like I'm an artist. But yeah, I love riding motorcycles. I love surfing. I love so many things, and it just happens that motorcycles are my avenue where I can earn money, and men's got to eat.
So this question is for Dina. Obviously, your dad did the film, and now you've done it. Has he seen the film, and what did he think of it?
Yeah, we sent him. He's executive.
in the movie.
Yeah, he's in the movie, and he's executive producer. So when we started, I kind of laid out what we had in mind. You never know until you do it. I thought Robbie was gonna be like 6'4" and real handsome, and
That's you. That's all you.
yeah, that's me. You're right. No, so it becomes a journey. You find out Robbie's Robbie, so you want to show that story. So I showed him that, and we went and shot it, and we'd send him rough cuts. I shot we edited the film in Canada, and I'd send him rough cuts, but he didn't see the whole finished product till the international premiere at the San Sebastian Film Festival in Spain about a month ago. And he's stoked. Now he's like, here's the Hollywood premiere. He's going next week to Spain, to Santa Barbara to the local deal. He's like the biggest supporter of it, which, you know, honestly, at the top of the list besides hoping the audience likes it. I mean, you want to make sure he's proud. So, yeah, as far as I know, he's on board.
Robbie, Dana, I want to thank you so much. I want to encourage people to see Dana's other films, Step Into Liquid and the wonderful Dust to Glory about the Baja 100. And thanks. And on any Sundays in theaters Friday, right? Yeah.
Go see it. Just you can buy a ticket. You don't even got to go see it.
Thanks for everyone having the time to listen to us.
Thank you.
Thank you to Apple Soho.
Continue a legacy and give a salute to the reason I even wanted to make films, which was seeing the original On Any Sunday when I was a kid. And here we are. You know, and I knew the story. It's a great world. So, you know, here we are.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, you know, when you set out, how much did you already know about, you know, just how much the sport had changed in 40 plus years, technology-wise? I mean, it's amazing, some of the bikes in the movie and what people can do with them. And how much of that was a discovery process about, you know, what the film would cover, who would be in the film, that sort of thing?
Well, I'm a fan of motorcycling, and I follow it and I ride. But I didn't, the co-writer on the movie is a guy named Scott Russo, who was editor at Cycle News. And I brought him in just for him to describe to me.
Work in different ways with Endless Summer Revisited, On Any Sunday Revisited, your own Step Into Liquid, which is a kind of high-tech Endless Summer for the 21st century. And so how did you come to want to revisit On Any Sunday in this way, to sort of see where bikes and motorbikes and everything else on two wheels is at this moment?
Well, On Any Sunday to me is like the high water mark in action sports documentaries. It was nominated for an Oscar, which imagine this kind of film, that happening.
Hey, it could happen. Don't say anything.
No, I'm just saying. So I got contacted by Red Bull Media House, and they wanted to do kind of a mainstream thing that got not so much the different disciplines, but the different people in the disciplines. Right. So every segment could kind of show a little different shade of the color spectrum in this shared passion. And as I got into it, you know, first of all, the talent of guys like this is unbelievable. And the cameras have gotten so much better. Everything's really just blown up in the ability, but the spirit of it remains. I mean, the sense of family, this shared passion, this thing that's passed on from generation to generation, like many shared passions. So I thought, well, this is pretty bitchin' because you have something that's going to look completely different, but at its heart, it's the heart beats the same. So it was a discovery. I kind of expected something, and I think in a lot of ways.
So it's really my great pleasure to bring out a great action sports filmmaker, Mr. Dana Brown, and the most dangerous man on two wheels, Robbie Maddison.
Thank you.
Well, Dana, let's just start by talking a little bit about sort of the origins of this movie, because we saw a little bit in the trailer there. People, I'm sure a lot of people know your dad, Bruce Brown's movies, the original On Any Sunday, and of course The Endless Summer, which is probably the movie's single most responsible for turning people on to surfing all over the world. And you sort of, over the last years, kind of revisited a lot of your dad's work.
In the theaters, and we're wondering what I had in mind. And we talked about different subject matter, and they brought up motorcycling. And then they said, what if you did a sequel to On Any Sunday? And I said, well, why don't we call it something else? Because in motorcycling, it's kind of like, you know, you have the New Testament and you go, I found another chapter. Like, there's people not going to be happy about that. But they kind of convinced me to do it, and I talked to Dad, and he said, yeah, I think it's time. And the more I thought about kind of my career, I thought, you know, like you said, I don't do movies on purpose to exploit or capitalize on his thing. We have similar sensibilities, etc. And I thought, God, you know, he's going to be 77. My mom passed away a few years ago. Nobody lasts forever. And I thought, wow, it's a good opportunity to maybe